Alright guys, Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. What I've got for you today is a breakdown, so an analysis of Morning and their song Automatic Sun. This is going to be lots of starting, lots of stopping, lots of pausing. If you just want a straight reaction to me watching it, I'll link to that with the eye up there. A huge shout out and a massive thank you as always to Rabbi Rabs, Glenn Kelly, Stephen Williams, Rebecca Hay, Falcon Sooner and Dale Scholes for their continued support on Patreon. I've got my guitar in hand as primarily a guitarist. That tends to be my main focus. I do play bass as well, so the drums tend to get left a bit behind in these analyses, so I do apologise. But this song in particular is a really good case study for three pieces, how they tend to play, how they use the loud quiet dynamic. So I'm going to start at the start, go through the song sequentially, and things that pop out that I think merit some more explanation I'll dive into. So right off the bat, sliding down into it, I would not have clocked this, so thank you so much to all the folk that mentioned in the comments that I think she's called Dany, the guitar player, sometimes uses a baritone guitar. Those comments were on my first time hearing these guys. I'll link to those videos with the eye up there, a reaction and a separate analysis. What a baritone guitar is it's basically a guitar, but tuned down. So you've got guitar that's kind of a bit higher pitch, you've got bass that's lower, and a baritone kind of brings the guitar down. The advantage to a baritone over detuning a guitar is just it's a slightly different sound. So here, for example, she's playing a B. Now this is the regular tuning on a guitar, that's the lowest B I can play, and if you listen to what she's playing, it's much lower. That's because it's an octave. So I can go, and it's not going to sound as heavy because it's lower in pitch, right? And then there's some cool, what that be? I'll kind of feel like that, and then what we're doing is going up to here. So I can play that one in the register she's playing, and you can see playing at the octave lower compared to higher, it just sounds a bit heavier. So what we've got basically is going from the relative minor down to the 4 chord, right? So we've got a 6-4 progression. It's an awesome chord progression. I'm a massive fan of that. He's way too much. Typical kind of Iron Maiden rock progression, right? What you might notice with her guitar tone as well is it's not as heavy as you might think it would be. There's not a huge amount of gain. I've done a very, very quick job of kind of emulating it by just sticking a bit of a fuzz drive in front of an amp. So I've got this kind of slightly gnarly tone, but not as gainy as you might think it would be for how heavy the song sounds. Probably, I would imagine, the studio version bigger again, right? Right there, why it sounds so huge is because the bass just comes in, hitting that low B string, right? Which you might have tuned down to an A. We'll get into the bass in a little second, but just listen out. So just now we've got the guitar panned quite heavily to the right. My hands are on the opposite side to yours, so I do apologise if the rights and lefts are counterintuitive. But listen out to your left hand side for the bass kind of coming in here. 1, 2, 3, 4. It just fills out all of that low end, and you can see a guitarist really, she'll be feeling that on stage. So when she's like hunched over here stamping her foot, that's what it feels like when the bass just kind of kicks in, right? I'm now armed with the bass. I started mumbling things about B and drop A. What do I mean? Well, what she has here is a 5-string bass, right? Normally it's just a 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and your lowest note is an E. This is a 5-string as well. The lowest note here is a B string. What I think she's done is tuned this down to an A. Why do I think that? Well, because the riff is going from a B to an A, it would make sense if the bass is doubling that, okay? And if we watch our hands, just here, she's somewhere around here, which probably isn't on the camera, somewhere around here. So that would imply that she's tuned the string down. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this B and tune it down to an A if my tuner will let me. Oh, okay. That's questionable. This bass isn't really set up for the string to go much lower than that, so it's probably going to sound like mud. But in the interest of demonstrating what I mean, then what was it? So it'd be everything's in a slightly different place because that's been detuned. So we're there. That kind of thing, right? And you can really hear, I mean, if you're listening to this on a phone or like laptop speakers or small speakers, this will be almost imperceptible because it's really low and you need a speaker with some sub to carry it. Okay, so if you listen out for that super low sound, some of you might not be able to even pitch it. You might not hear that as notes. It's certainly when I got this extra fifth string, it took me a while to be able to hear it. And to some people, bass, you don't necessarily hear the pitch, they just hear the percussive element of it. So it's really just filling out the sound. Obviously, this is very nicely produced. And I would say if you heard the bass in isolation, it wouldn't be as flubby as this. It would sound pretty tight, pretty good. The other thing to mention here, this is a good shot to bring it up, is you can see in front of their feet, straight in front of the guitarist, is this huge pedal board. It looks more like it's a MIDI controller. I've been told she uses a Kemper. Here she's clearly not using a Kemper. A Kemper is a profiling amplifier, so you can basically have this little box and you can have all your sounds in it. If you look behind her, the orange thing is called an orange amplifier. It's orange, they're called orange. It's very hard to get a bad sound out of them. I do really like them, particularly for live. They just have this real kind of rich mid-range to them. So it's possible that she has a Kemper kind of pedal board in front of her, or controller board, you could call it. I'm not entirely sure. I need to dive more into their gear. And if you look over at the bassist in front of her right foot, just to the side of the mic stand, are the pedals she's using. So I'm assuming there'll be a tuner there, maybe an EQ and overdrives. At least one overdrive and at least one fuzz pedal, because she's got those two different tones. Another thing that's a little bit noteworthy is how they have their microphones set up and angled. So what the bassist has is interesting, is she's put the mic to the side of her pedals and then angled the kind of top arm of the mic stand so she can do her backing vocals. The singer, on the other hand, has it on the other side of the pedal board pointing at her. It's just kind of a preference thing. I would tend to go for more what the bassist has there, probably more to the side, leaning over the board. But, you know, different strokes for different folks. So what is she doing here? I'm going to have to switch back to guitar now. What a nightmare. Well, before I do, we'll look at the bass, right? We'll look at what the bass is doing there and contrast and compare. So what we got. Right, just boom, boom. So that's probably that beat. It's also worth noting at this point that she's using a plectrum, which you can also see in the mic stand there, the spares. Plectrums tend to sound a bit better for distortion. I know music's subjective and tones are subjective, and this is a contentious thing to say. I'll just give you an example, particularly with these low notes. If I use this pick, compared to my fingers, you get a bit more note definition with the plectrum than you do with your fingers. A bit more rounded. You can dig in. Do the Geddy Lee thing and use your nail. But pick is going to give you that note definition. She also later on does some palm muting, which is where you rest your palm lightly on the strings near the bridge. You can do this with your fingers, so you can hear that sort of rather than bring the muting in. More percussive sound. You can do it with your fingers, but it's a bit trickier. If you use the pick, so start off with no palm muting, bring it in, get much tighter with it. And ease off. So you get this really kind of short, stabby percussive sound. So to demonstrate with this guitar, in case you're wondering, this is a tuner and this is to kind of stop string chirp, but this will still work. You just hit behind the nut there and you get a bit of kind of dissonant noise. This guitar doesn't sound particularly musical. I suspect because she's got the baritone guitar here, it's sounding a bit cooler. So by contrast here, this Telecaster is more sustained, it sounds a bit better. It resonates in D. If you want more information on behind the nutbacks, check out the video with the eye up there. Okay, back to the song. And there, that's cool for a little section change. Boom, boom, both all accenting, all three of them. So she might even be plucking those strings there, the higher ones, and then the lower one. Because it sounds like there were two different timbres there in the Behind the Nut thing. I'd need to check out the studio one, and I've got enough to talk about with this live performance, so I don't think I'll double check that today quite yet. So I talked about palm muting, and that's what she's doing here. So the dynamic's been dropped. Again, much heavier sounding than this guitar because it's an octave lower, much fuller, fatter, lower sound. Drums keeping it really simple. Lightly on the tom there, I think. The kick drum and the snare just keeping a kind of simple beat. Yeah, doom, doom. So this is when I'm talking about dynamics. This is kind of what three pieces do. Because you're limited in how many instruments you have here, you know, 3 vocals, guitar, bass, drums, you really want to take advantage of loud, quiet dynamics. I don't know why bands, 3 pieces just do this more. I honestly don't know why it's more common with 3 pieces to do this than 4 pieces, but it was just the way of things, I suppose. And again with the dynamics, so you got the palm muted guitar and the bass is dropped out. Drums doing this, yeah, kind of a simple beat with the kick and the tom doubled, I think, the snare on the offbeat, a fill to kind of signal to us that, you know, we're coming in to a different section or it's building up somewhere. Yeah, and here, what really bumped into my head there was the Jackass CKY, what's it called, like 1,000 bitter endings or something like that, when the bass comes in, because it just has that same heaviness. You listen out for that kind of that drop again with the bass coming in after this fill, right? A real spank to it. Then are we just going off the semitone? There's something interesting happening there in terms of the harmony, let's figure out. So what they're doing is going from a G to G sharp for wonderful music theory reasons that I'm not going to get into. The G sharp is actually an E, which we get the second time round with the G sharp. There's a little fill she's doing there, a little slide down. Then we're back to the G, then to that E. What is particularly interesting about this is it's mixing major and minor tonalities. So when you have an E note, if you play a G over it, I'll play it up here, it's a minor chord. When you play a G sharp, it's a major chord. This bit is kind of, it's from the blues, but in the context here, it's got more of a kind of Queens of the Stone Age vibe for me. The other kind of noteworthy thing here is that the guitar's not really been doing any chords, so you get your kind of big open chords. Bit out of tune there. Right, a bit more in tune now. And you get things called power chords, which is basically just playing 2 notes. And most of the time on guitar, that's what we kind of do, is Whereas here you can hear it doesn't sound quite right. That's because we're implying a different chord. But without getting into the theory of it, even with the main riff, there's quite a lot of strength to instead of like, you know, difficult to do that. Let's try it this way. Instead of playing a chord, it's just because it sort of sounds fuller with the bass doubling that than it would playing this power chord with the bass doubling it. And if we watch our fingers here, you can see in action. It's a close-up one coming. So there, that, and you might wonder what this little dance that our hand's doing is. It's left hand muting. So this pinky's coming down to stop the string from ringing out. Otherwise, you get this. So this left hand muting combined with the right hand palm muting, you get a really nice kind of choked. If I take the right palm muting away, you get more of an open. And if we want to really choke it, feels like it should be a G there, but it's not. Is it maybe a... Yeah, okay. So do like a bluesy bend on the D and then down to the B. That's an interesting key change, I think. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So E minor is in the key of B minor. B minor is the key this song is in. E major, when I went to this note, which is the chord they're playing, is not. But it provides a really nice kind of slight melodic twist to give the song a bit more character, a bit more vibe, and a bit more distinction in that section. So when we're going back to the kind of the B minor thunks, it's not just that throughout the song, it's got this little bit in between that's a bit more different. So this is, yeah, so we basically got the 6 chord up to the 4 chord, down to the 2 chord, which it's not a totally unusual progression, but for kind of pop rock, it's not something you hear every day. And then we're back down to that main kind of theme. And then a really tight harmony there. And you'll notice she's coming back from the microphone because that note's in her belting range, so it needs to kind of put quite a bit of, what do you call it, diaphragmatic support into it to get up there. You don't want the note to be too overpowering, so you move back from the mic. This is just someone who's gigged in his, you call it mic control. It's, you know, something that she knows to do. Bam, 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 bam. So would that be? Yeah, so just kind of going down the scale, boom, 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 and back to our kind of home for this song, B. And a really kind of small, boom, boom, like it's a 2-bar bridge or something like that, just between sections. And again, everything accenting those notes, so it's huge. Back down to a quieter dynamic, and I noticed this on the first listen. If you're wearing headphones, you'll notice this more. The guitar is starting to creep through the left speaker just a little bit more. It's panning a little bit more in there. And there's maybe a tiny bit more high end in the sound. It sounds like there's a slight delay, so what they might have done is just let the microphone on the bass cabinet pick it up. So by delay, I mean this sound is happening like milliseconds before this one. So if you have a microphone right next to the source and a microphone over in the corner, there's going to be a difference in time between them. So that might be what's going on there. She might have a doubling effect on to get the same effect. And you can hear the basses come in now And it is interesting that the bass is, while still quite in the centre, also quite far on the left. Modern rock music, I say modern since, like, if you think of Nevermind as being like the blueprint for how to make a rock album, and with good reason, it sounds amazing. Bass kind of down the middle, guitars at the side. So even if there's just one guitarist, you get them to play it twice and you double track it. So on their studio songs that I've heard, they do this a little bit more. But it's interesting to see the bass, or hear the bass being panned out to the side more than you'd usually expect. And these little fiddly riffs in between as well, a little bit of bending there. A nice pause there, down to the vocals, drum fill coming in, so new section. So rather than just like simple quiet verse, loud chorus, which is like the Pixies' Bible, and it sounds amazing, it's a good way to write songs. They're doing little miniature dynamic pops within, you know, their verses and pre-choruses and all that sort of thing. Yeah, cool. And the way the vocals follow the chords is just very pleasing. If you listen to the vocal hook, it's nice complementary notes. I say chords, they're playing single notes, but even though they're playing single notes, there's an implied harmony. I know, madness. And here, just coming out of the end of this, we've got a nice stabs with them all going bam, 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 bam. If you watch the drums as well, it really hits it home. So just on the cymbals with a kick, dum, 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 dum. And a really simple rhythm, just 1, 2, 3, 4, very effective. And then, so, was that it, or did she go up? Let's check. Yeah, so that's cool. So I thought it was a strict harmony of, because the first notes do harmonize nicely, but then playing those two together would be a nightmare. Beautiful. But what this note does is it introduces the harmonic minor. So it's a classical scale that they also used in the solo for Burnout. And this is where you can hear a bit of the Muse influence coming in. It's that kind of Matt Bellamy thing. You know, using this note to lead back to this one. Very Yngwie J. Malmsteen, if you like him, I'll link to stuff with the high up there. He was kind of the guy for guitarists that introduced classical music to rock. Obviously, you have people like Randy Rhoads, and I'd say more so Ritchie Blackmore, that kind of did it before him, but Yngwie really melded the two together. So when I was talking about palm muting on the bass, that's what's going on here. That's why it's so kind of staccato, and with that plectrum and a bit of left hand muting going on as well. And just on that is an E, B. So just nice, simple, keeping the fort held down. You'll hear the kick drum accenting every quarter note. Boom, 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 boom. Whereas the bass doing 8, boom, 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 boom. So also touching into kind of flavors of the progressions they've used before here, so it's not like a totally new section. If you listen to the bass there, that's very subtle. The muting becomes less as it's going on, so it's building the dynamic because it's less staccato, right? It's less short and stabby. If you listen here, you can hear the transition. So still quite stabby, not as stabby, and then here, dun 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 dun. So was that the same? There's less. It's getting closer to. Not quite there yet, but easing up on the muting. So it's this really subtle build that you might not even hear unless you really listen out to it. But it's kind of these unconscious things that let you know there's a build going on, even if it's very subtle. Also, to our credit, if you're just playing with a bass, pitching your vocals is much more difficult because it's an octave lower, so there's not as much reference in what you hear coming out the amplifiers for where to pitch your note. Just take it. And here, also a slightly underrated thing, knowing when she can take the mic out and when to put it back in, so there's time to play the guitar without being, caught out panically trying to shove the mic back in the holder. And here, yeah, I'm pretty sure this shot would have been blocked out to say look at the camera at this point, because it's just a good shot, isn't it? And then cool, fill, pause, and then vocals. So does the bass pause there as well? I think it did. So down to the guitar, the big high vocals. Boom. Yeah, so the bass holding a note there, drums doing a short stab. So it's like a tiny breath before you go into the chorus here. A wee bit Arctic Monkeys actually as well. What is interesting is the guitar that sound isn't becoming huge in the chorus compared to the verse. So it's really her using the big vocals to fill it out, which is a thing people can overlook. If your chorus has a big singy chorus, you don't necessarily need like your guitarist to jump up a huge amount as well. It can help, it depends on the song. But here, like, it's not needed. Yeah, cool, and there we've got that descending run that we had before. And then back to home, back to D. And this is the sort of riff that you'd come up with within like maybe a few years of playing, because it's pretty straightforward. And you'd be quite happy with, and after a few more years of playing, you'd play it and you'd be like, oh, it's not complicated enough, it's a bit basic. But when you play it in like a live context with a tight band, it doesn't need to be more than that, you know what I mean? There's something very powerful about kind of like a simple riff being played quite well and tightly by a band. Not to say that there's anything wrong with your kind of Polyphia or your Dream Theater or anything like that. It's, everything's got its own place. But there is there's something to be said for a nice tight kind of punchy riff. Like if you take a kind of a pub cover song like Paranoid, Black Sabbath, easy enough song to play, not super complicated. But to get it tight as a band and play it at the right speed is a trickier thing to do. You've probably heard quite a few covers if you go to live gigs of Paranoid in your time, but I don't know how many like really good ones you'd have heard. And simple song, but it needs to be tight, everything needs to be locked in. And you can hear here everything's locked in. It's nice simple drum groove, really beating the crap out of them as well. Good strong sound. And I'd also say a really good live mix. It's nice and clear without being too sterile. Sometimes live mixes, they've gone much better as they've gotten on, where they can isolate the each instrument more and produce it a bit. You could maybe do with a wee bit more of like ambient mic, so just a wee bit of the kind of white noise and the reverb of the room. But yeah, great sound. And then some kind of filth just to kind of end up here. That was a very cool thing to end on. I don't think I'll be able to figure it out. Sounds like there's maybe a harmonic and a bend going on. Let's try. I think the bass is bending from this note to that one or sliding up. Is that she's doing that, just 9th fret on the D and the G and bending off a semitone. So you basically have that kind of sound. The other possibilities are that she's just doing a dirty tritone with the bass doing this underneath, getting the sound a bit, or bending up to this note again with the bass doing doing that. If I can get this is yeah, something like that. And ending on this weird tritone chord. That's the best guess I can have here, but my ears aren't picking it up properly. Patreon.com/JBF Music is the best place to go if you have the means and inclination to support the channel, or have a request of your own to make. But cheers guys, hope you're having a good one.